he's just a stone's throw away. In Luke, it says that he withdrew himself for about a stone's throw away, and he knelt down and he prayed. Now, if you look at the definition in the Bible of what it says about a stone's throw, and it gives you an idea through different commentaries that Jesus now, he's in Gethsemane, all right? And he's headed towards the cross, and the disciples, they're there with him. And Jesus said he's going to just go a little bit further, a stone's throw away, and where he's going to be praying. And the events are about to take place that happened that we all know about. But if you think about it, Jesus is just a stone's throw away. Now, the definition is that Jesus is always close enough to where you can see him, but he's also at a distance to where you can feel completely isolated. So there's times when you can feel isolated and you can't necessarily see Jesus. In fact, there's times where we read through the Bible and we read the stories where you have the boat and the disciples in the boat, and Jesus was coming and he was passing by, and he was not necessarily in focus. They couldn't see him really clearly. In fact, they thought he was a ghost. So there are times when you're going to find that even though he is close by, he's within sight, and he's only a stone's throw away, it's going to be a little blurry. And you're not exactly knowing where he is, or why am I going through this, or what's happening. And so when you think about that, Jesus said that in this passage, he said that he needed to go a little bit further. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how we can go a little bit further. And, Jesus is well aware of where we're at. He knows what we're going through. He knows what we've gone through. He knows where we are at the moment, and he knows exactly where you're going to be 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 2 minutes from now. You haven't even decided where you're going to have lunch yet. He already knows where you're going to have lunch. Some of these things that we don't even know that what we're going to do, he already knows. So he knows everything about us. Now, it's interesting how much he actually does know about us. We can find that in the story where Jesus fed the 5,000. And you know the story. You have the disciples, and actually they were on the side of a mountain, and I think they were probably relaxing. And they could see the crowds coming, and the crowds are just coming, and they're in a deserted place. They're off in a distance. There's nothing around. They're sort of in the middle of nowhere. And what happens? All these people are following Jesus. And as they follow him and they get closer, Jesus says to Philip, while they're sitting there, he said, and the Bible says he said this to test them. He said, where are we going to find food to feed all these people out here? And it says he said that to test them. And here's the verse that I noticed that I hadn't really seen before, and it says that for Jesus knew already in himself what he was going to do. You see, sometimes we think we're following God and we're going in the right direction. We're doing everything he says we should do. We believe that we're right in the middle of where he wants us to be. But why is all this stuff happening to me? Why am I always in a spot where it seems like I'm doing everything right, but it doesn't seem as if things are coming together? The point is that like these people, when they were following Jesus and they were out there, they didn't realize they're on the edge of something really big. Jesus already knows what he's going to do. He knows that what the future holds and what's going to happen, and he's bringing you to a place to where there's no place you can look but up, and when you look up, he's got the answer already. He already knows what he's going to do in your situation. He has it all figured out. We don't have to sit there and knock ourselves out and try to figure out, what am I going to do? He knows what he's going to do. God knows what he's doing. A little secret, okay? He knows what he's doing. He's capable. And so that was kind of a test. And so he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's going to do. He knows what he's going to do in every situation we're in. We just don't know. Now, it gets a little more interesting because not only does he know, for instance, remember the paraplegic man that was paralyzed for 38 years? Jesus came up to him and he knew the condition he was in. He knew already. He didn't have to ask him, what are you going through? What's happening to you? He knows everything about you. He knows everything about the condition you're in. And he knows what the answer is. And we're going to see later, he's already even provided the answer before we even get there. So, you hear this saying sometimes that the devil is in the details. That is not true. The devil looks at you as a number. Revelation, right? 666. He sees you as a number. God is in the details. He knows every hair on your head. He knows exactly everything that's going through your mind. When he looked at the Pharisees, he knew what they were thinking. He knows. And he's aware of every aspect of what you're facing and maybe going through. Now, in this little story here, Jesus went a little bit further. And the disciples, they were back. And he's just a stone's throw away. So what we need to do to where Jesus is take ourselves just a little bit further. You see, we're in a situation where we have a need or something's happening and we can't necessarily find a way out. And we do everything that we think we're supposed to do, but it just seems to linger. It seems to stay there. And what I'm trying to say today is just when you think that you've done all you can do, you just need to go a little bit further. A little bit further with your faith. A little bit further with your perseverance. Just a little bit further. It doesn't say go a mile further. It doesn't say like, I've got to really work at this, and it says a little. Just go a little bit further. You see, between that distance where the disciples are and where Jesus is within eyesight, that stone's throw, that distance in between there, when you start to head that direction a little bit further, that's when things start to happen. That's when you start to see God move. That's when you actually can see the miraculous aspect of God, because you're going all in. You're selling out. You're saying, God, here I am. I've done everything I can do. I can't do any more. So I'm just going to go a little bit further and I'm going to give you everything. And as you do that, within that span, that's where it starts to happen. Now, I remember when I was, working and in business, and I still am, by the way. I shouldn't say it that way. I am in business, but I'm talking about a little testimony from before. And this is 2008. Does anybody remember 2008? There was a recession, foreclosures. If you're in the building industry, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I think, maybe 13 different, builders go out of business. And here I am. I've got to support a family. And so I'd be building homes, and you sell them, and you'd build another one, get a few contracts, and God is always blessed. He never did bless. But in 2008, you had the foreclosures, and people are going out of business. People are losing their homes, and houses are sitting, and they're not getting sold. But I felt God was telling me the way to beat this is just go a little bit further. He's in eyesight. He's a stone's throw away. Help is not that far. Just a little bit further. So I go a little bit further, and he challenged my faith. You can't go further with God without faith. It's impossible to please God without faith. So you need to step out. And so it came time to give. Here I am. I had a house sold. My brother remembers the story. It'll come together. I had a house that just sold, and I've got money in the bank, And that's when I give offerings, is off of when I sell something, I come, and so it's like every 3-4 months. But when I come, it kind of makes up for the difference of, throughout the year. But so the challenge was, do I give it all? Do I give, because all these houses are sitting, I know I'm going to be starting another house at some point, things are not good, I could run out of money. If I give, I could very easily, like everybody else, run out of money before the next house sells, and I'd be just like everybody else in a foreclosure situation, out of business. But I felt God telling me, and I'm not saying everybody should do this, but I felt Him say, go a little bit further. And I gave anyways, knowing that the likelihood of falling short was going to be there. And so I gave. And sure enough, we get down to the wire, the house is not getting sold. There's a foreclosure here, foreclosure there, the house is here, it's not selling, and I'm saying to myself, God, this does not look good. I followed you just like these people did out into the desert, and now there's no food, there's nothing, I'm alone, isolated, and where are you? And so what happens? That's when the miracle stuff begins. That's when between Jesus, a stone's throw away, and on the edge, that's when God begins to move. And so me, making sure I want to take care of my family, I call up my brother Jeff. I said, Jeffrey, I'm in bad shape here. My gosh, it's not sold. And you think Mom would take me in, And that turned out to be a big kind of long ordeal and everything, and family, and it just, not everybody's on board when you're on board, and it just kind of, I'm not saying anything bad about family, it's just that we all have our way of thinking. But in the interim, I'm on the edge now. I get a phone call. Do you guys know this story? I think I told it once before. Good. So I get a phone call, and it's my old friend Jonathan. And Jonathan, he lives on the East Coast, and he calls once every 6 months or 3 months or so, and just says, hi, how's it going? And he calls me up. He said, John, how's it going? And I said, well, I'll tell you what, first they said, good, but you can keep me in prayer. Keep me in prayer, because this is what's happening, and we're going to be on the street if I don't make the mortgage next month, or we're going to go through the process, and it's not looking good. And he says, John, do you know what? And I said, what? Remember my uncle? Because I visited, and he's Myrtle Beach. Yeah, he's right there in the Myrtle Beach area, and right where the CBN is, and that your Christian network and everything. And he said, and I was there, hanging out with him once, and met his uncle, and he's a pilot, and I liked all that stuff. And he says, well, remember my uncle? And I said, yeah. He said, guess what happened? I said, what? I mean, it's not good he passed away, but he left me and my brother like a ton of money. He said he left us with, and I think it was way up there. And he says, how much do you need? I go, well, and my number wasn't small, okay? I said, well, I actually need this much. Consider it a Christmas gift. I'll send it out tomorrow. Now, this guy is not a rich guy. I don't have a rich uncle, okay? Well, we did, but I didn't have a rich uncle to go to that would help me out. But the one thing we do have, okay, we have a Father in heaven that owns all the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns heaven and earth. He owns all the silver, all the gold. And I knew I was just a stone's throw away from that. And all it took was going a little further. That step of faith. And so God provided. He took care of everything. Everything belongs to God. And He's able to move it towards you when you're in a time of need. And so he was just a stone's throw away. And Jonathan, my friend, God blessed him, I'm sure. He came through. And of course, the end of the story is that we got the house sold, and I've been in business ever since and never had to look back or wonder are we going to continue? And God pretty much has shown me that He wants us to be in business, and He's been behind it and faithful through the whole thing. Now, the disciples, they went a little bit further, and that's something we can do too. We can always go a little bit further. But you might say, but John, there's nothing happening here. There's nothing happening. I'm doing what's right. I'm following God. I'm in this deserted place. I'm in the middle of nowhere. You might even start to get that panic kind of feeling, and you want to turn back and go back to where you were because you're not seeing any results. But we need to go a little bit further because that's where things do happen. This is interesting, and I know you're going to like this, and I never saw this before. And it's in Elijah in the Old Testament. I know Pastor Jared wants to speak on that. I'm just going to mention a couple of small things and zero in on just 2 verses. But this will be something that I'm not going to guarantee you, but I don't think anybody, with the exception of Hugh, probably has, well, I'm not everybody. We all look, and I'm sure you may know this as well. But not to be condescending, which it sounds like I am, okay? But listen to this, okay? Old Testament, 1 Kings chapter 17. You know the story. You've got Elijah. Elijah is in a drought. And God says to Elijah, I want you to go to the brook Cherith. Yeah, I think Cherith. I want you to go to the brook of Cherith. And there, he said, not only will he have water, but he said, I have commanded the ravens to provide food for you. And then a little bit later, same thing kind of happens. It's time for Elijah to move, and God actually is sending him to a place where there's going to be some of his greatest miracles that ever happened. And he says to him, I want you now to go the Zarephath, because I have commanded a widow woman to provide for you there. Do you know you have a place called there? We all have a place called there. And it's not where you are now. It's like there. It's a little further. It's a stone's throw away. And so what's interesting about this is before Elijah even knew the problem that was facing him, before he knew the issues, the circumstances, he obviously didn't know the future. God had already said, I have commanded before he left. He made the provision before he actually took a step towards the direction he was going. God is so far ahead of us, providing, making the way, that all we have to do, and he had to step out in faith. He had to go forward. He had to make that decision that I'm not staying here, I'm going there, to that place called there. And we all have it there. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to move. It could, but it could be an idea. It could be a thought. Maybe God gave me these thoughts about the idea of going out into the community. That's a place called there. How is that going to happen? You got to put steps to your thoughts. You have to put steps to your faith. There has to be some action involved. And so he took those steps of faith, and what happened? God provided, just like he commanded ahead of time that he would do. And it was there when he got there. Now, if you want something big in your life, you got to step out. It's there, but it's not like here. You got to step out in faith to where God's leading you a little bit further, and you'll find it. It's there. And so you have to receive what God has already given us. And we can do that. We can receive it. We can receive healing. It's just a stone's throw away. Our finances can be turned around. It's just a stone's throw away. Your children and the issues that you're having with them, or whatever it may be, it's just a stone's throw away. Your ministry or things you want to do for God, they're just a stone's throw away. Your relationships with other people, it's just a stone's throw away. Something big God wants to do in your life is just a stone's throw away. Those things that you thought were not possible, that could never happen to you or in your life, are really just a stone's throw away. It's all possible. You know, when Jesus was on the road and he was walking with the Emmaus road with the two disciples or individuals, they were talking together back and forth. And as they were talking about the resurrection, and they didn't know it was Jesus at the moment. But the interesting thing is when they got to the place, this is almost a little funny, but when they got to the place where the two that were talking to Jesus, their village, they were going to stop, and this is where we get off, okay? We live here. And so Jesus, now look at this. I didn't know Jesus did this kind of thing, but it says that Jesus acted as if he was going to go a little further, kind of like teasing him a little bit. He was teasing him, testing him. He acted as if he was going to go a little further. And what did they do? They said, no, you have to stay with us. Now, Jesus is going a little further. And he's ahead of us. In the storm, it said Jesus, when they were in the boat, it says that Jesus would have passed them by, or as if he was going to pass them by. So he's there. You can see him. And when you look, you may not make it out totally what's going on, but you have to take a step in his direction. And so these two men, they said, stay with us. And I'm going to keep going. I'm going a little further, you know. And he's actually kind of playing with them. And so what do? They strongly urge him to be staying with them. And in another translation is they constrained him. You want to catch Jesus when he's a little further and he's within eyesight? Constrain, press in. Remember with the woman with the issue of blood? Same story. Jesus is passing by to Jairus' house. And Jairus' daughter is ill. And he said, I'll come to the house. He's headed some other direction. He's on something else. And the woman with the issue of blood, okay, she's seen Jesus. And what did she do? If I can just touch the hem of his garment. You know, Jesus is always passing by. He's always close. He's within eyesight. He's not always clear. He's just a stone's throw away. But if we go a little further with our faith, like she did, she went further, closer and closer, touched the hem of his garment, and she was healed while he was passing by. Why do we like to sit in a sinking boat? The disciples, they're all in the boat and it's sinking. Why do we like to sit in a sinking boat? Jesus came by, stone's throw away. If Peter didn't get out of the boat, that boat may have sank. He got out of the boat, he went a little bit further, Jesus came to him, and then they're in the boat. So the idea is we need to take those steps. And when you take those steps and you go that a little bit further, it's always going to work out. Things are going to come your way. And even though he's passing by at times, he'll never totally walk away from you. But he makes himself visible. And when he does, it's at those moments that you have to constrain him. You have to press in. Yeah, I remember this eye when it was, I've said it so many times, when it was blind. The only reason that I think the reason it opened up is I would not let go. Every day. You can't be like this. I'm a child of God. I would quote verses, and I might be in a bathroom and say something and come out and people are looking at you a little bit, you know, because I'm telling the devil, get off my body. You don't belong here. Sickness is not from God. You're trespassing. And I would not let go. One day, poof, go a little bit further. Press in. Get the idea God's given you. Don't give up on it. And keep moving. It takes action along with your faith. So if I were to encourage you today, I would say keep believing. Keep believing, like my brother. I'm going to keep believing. Okay? That's a little bit further. And I'm not going to give up. That's a little bit further. And I'm going to read my Bible more. I'm going to hear what God has to say about this topic. That's a little bit further. I'm going to pray more. That's a little bit further. I might fast once in a while. That's a little bit further. And we all know what we can do to go a little bit further. So in your situation, if I could encourage you today, I would say keep believing and press in. Don't be like, get a load of this, the disciples. They're on the edge. And while the greatest event of all time, where heaven and earth are in balance, and Jesus is struggling with God, when he went a little bit further, and he made the big decision that, yes, Lord, I'll do it. While this is all happening, something big, and the disciples were on the edge of something big, instead of them going a little bit further, they fell asleep. It says they fell asleep. And we can sometimes get to a place where we get a little numb, and we've heard this kind of stuff so many times that it just kind of just like water rolling off a duck's back. And it doesn't really kind of take root. But again, if I could encourage you, whatever you're seeking, whatever you're up against, you're on the edge. And it's just a step away. And God will meet that need. Amen? And if you're watching today online, you're just a stone's throw away from knowing Jesus. You may know who he is. You may know that he was here on the earth, and you may know that he is the Son of God, and you might even think all those things, so you don't have a problem with that, but you actually really don't know him. You know, Jesus knows. He knows you, but you really don't know him, and you can know him intimately as a friend in your heart and your mind, just by asking him to come into your life, and he will. And he'll provide for you the same way, and he'll make provisions for you. And when there's difficult times coming up, he'll have an answer for you. And God's a good God, and you can know him today just by asking him into your heart. Amen.
Pastor John, sing together.